Hey, hey, Stephen. Welcome and good morning if it's morning for you. Um, and this is going to be a good open hour for any chat that you want to have about music theory, and all that goes with it. So I want to start out with uh, an update on the course. So uh, in essence, part 5 of the theory course is on track to begin rolling out soon. Lesson 16 is in early August of 2024. So lots more to come on that as it's rolling out. But I just wanted to cover some of the key things about the course up till this point to get our bearings, because it's been a minute since I've released a lesson in the course, a minute or two. So I want to do an overview of where we are in the course, where I am in releasing the lessons in the course. Now, if you have been through these lessons, then you'll know what I'm talking about. If you haven't, definitely go through parts 1 through 4, which are fundamentals, chords, time, and composition. Lessons 0, which is in essence the intro to the course, through 15 have been published. And this line that I just drew is where it has left off, and where I've been working feverishly over the past several months on part 5, lessons 16 through 20. So if you haven't been through the first part of the course, or the first 4 parts of the course, it's definitely worth a refresher, or not even a refresher, to go through those. If you have been through parts 1 through 4, I would recommend going through them again, because when we get into lesson 16 going forward, so in part 5, which is going to be rolling out, like I say, lesson 16 in early August, that is part 5 I'm really excited about, because this is where all of the dots that we've been collecting in parts 1 through 4, this is where we start to connect those dots. So it starts getting kind of crazy in a cool way. Music theory is truly astounding, and it really starts getting cool in part 5. I mean, it's cool up till then, but it starts getting like whoa, especially as we jump into lesson 16. So if you've been through those lessons 1 through 15, I recommend checking them out again. And if you haven't, definitely recommend checking out, because you might be like, what is even going on in lesson 16? Because music theory is, like I say, astounding in how intricate it is. Also, with part 5, and what goes with it is, this is, I'm showing an overview. So the stuff in gold, part 5, is this content here. And I'll talk a little bit about lesson 20. In essence, lesson 20, I'm going to be completing once these lessons roll out, because lesson 20 is kind of the link between, it's the capstone on the course, looking back over the course, and then also looking forward to what comes after that. It's lesson 20 is Beyond Diatonic Theory, is what it's called. Getting into the actual content itself, doing a slightly deeper dive, let's look at these elements. This is a higher res image that I have here. So lesson 16 is about the fretboard matrix. Now, in part 1 of the course and part 2, we get into the fretboard matrix at a fairly high level. I mean, it's a pretty deep dive, certainly compared to other things you'll find out there about the guitar fretboard. But lesson 16 is doing a swan dive into the rabbit hole, where we're really getting into the ins and outs of the matrix, the fretboard patterns on there, and what is really going on with the notes. Because it's one thing to say that you can see sound and you can see these patterns, and we do some initial dissections of those patterns. Lesson 16 is like, gets into it. And you'll see what I mean as this rolls out, and there's going to be content around that as well, some videos and good stuff. So I'm excited for the lesson 16 rollout. Lesson 17 is about chord inversions and extensions. So it's building on what we learned in lesson 16, which is really getting a feel for the fretboard patterns. Lesson 17 is building on those with chord shapes, chord inversions, and chord extensions. Lesson 18 is, so that was lesson 17. Lesson 18 is expanding your palette, getting into modes. And so not only just learning chord shapes, but the theory and logic behind the relationships. And there's a lot there in lesson 18. Lesson 19 goes even further. So it's not only modes, but how modes interact and how to navigate harmonic space to come up with all sorts of chord progressions. We've talked a bit here and there about these content, about this content in live streams and these open hours, but there is a wonderland of information that goes with it, and I'm excited to be diving into that. Also, supplementary to, not part of the course, but supplementary, are chord books 1 and 2. I've talked about these quite a bit in these open hours. That's chord book 1, chord book 2, and then the mode book. And they're kind of aligned with the lessons that they supplement, which is chord books. Chord book 1 is a supplement to lesson 17. Chord book 2 also supplements lesson 17, but also lesson 18. And then lesson 18 is also supplemented by the mode book 1. And between all of these lessons in part 5 and the supplementary materials, it's about 2,000 pages of lessons and diagrams. So over the last several months, as I've been just kind of sequestered away, writing notes. If you've seen the behind the scenes about the lesson creation process, I've been doing that for a while now. So all that to say, good stuff. I'm excited to be rolling these out. So like I say, lesson 16 rolling out in early August. And so we're about to July right now. So it's in the coming weeks. So that is the latest, a very high level overview of where we are with the rollout timing and all of that, and more to come on that. Like with all of these open hours, I don't have a planned presentation per se, so we can talk about anything you want. And if there is no conversation, I'll just be working on some stuff here. So I'm going to keep my eyes peeled and looking at the chat to see any conversation you want to have. And let's see. Yes. Yep. So, Stephen, when do you anticipate the chord books release? Yeah, that's a good question, because I didn't address that. Let me pull up, since I'm so visual myself, I'm going to pull up the graphic on that. So the chord books are as supplements to the lessons. I'm going to have, there we go. That's what I'm looking for. Just get rid of my scribbles. Since chord books 1 and 2 supplementing lesson 17 are going to correspond with that timing. So after lesson 16, I'm working on some videos and some materials that go with that. And then likewise with lesson 17, some videos and materials that go with that. And when lesson 17 publishes, or right around that time, it might be a little bit before or just at that time, the chord book 1 and 2 will release. And so I'm looking at the timing between lessons, and it's going to be a matter of, a couple of weeks in that range between lessons. And then likewise, the mode book, I'm looking at the mode book releasing either likewise as a supplement to lesson 18 with that similar timing. The mode book actually might, that actually will release with the chord book 1 and 2. You can see the paint is a little bit wet as I'm kind of like thinking out loud here, because I'm like, yeah, I'm looking at having these released as a bundle. And so because they're so supplementary and so they go together as a set. So all that to say, long answer to short question, the PDF bundle is around the time of lesson 17, which with each lesson being released in sequence will be after lesson 16. So the chord books will probably be early to mid-fall in essence on the timing on that. And between those, so I was saying it's about 2,000 pages between all of this, and these alone are like 1,178 pages. It was intensely awesome creating those, and it's intensely awesome to be have those in a spot, because they're so supplementary to the other lessons. Having the context there will be helpful to have lesson 17 out for those PDFs to roll out as well. They do, the chord books and the Modebook are standalone, like they stand on their own, and the information itself is illuminating for sure. Having lesson 17 as the theory and the story and the like layout, the lesson that goes without, to have that out, lesson 17 for the PDFs is a complementary information that helps give it context. So context and a lot of content in the PDFs. Yeah, when I started with the PDFs with these, I was like, oh yeah, that's gonna be pretty simple process. And then as I got into it, I was like, whoa. It was like embarking on a submarine voyage, thinking it was going to be, a little 3-hour tour, and it ended up being much more than a 3-hour tour. I found myself on the island with Gilligan and the crew. Yes, so that's a great question, and that's how the timing is looking. I'm really excited to be rolling this out. I've been talking about it, and just kind of saying, hey, this is going to be fun, and to have them rolling out is so exciting. It's the material that I have wanted to share for a long time. Yeah. With there was a question too that I started into, I think it was last week, that Rostelate had asked about the circle of fifths, or with the ChordMap, and just kind of a tutorial and overview of its layout. And so I can jump into that time permitting or topic permitting. Like I say, I'm all live chat, prioritize that since we're here now. And if there's a window to do that, I will. I'm moving some stuff around. I have like condensation on this cup. I don't want to like electrocute myself with all this electricity around me. Let's look at it. Let's look at Rostelate. You had a question. If you're on or part of the replay crew on this, we can talk about the circle of fifths with the ChordMap here, which is this, and doing an overview of kind of how to navigate it. So, and this is speaking of the circle of fifths and navigating harmonic space. Lesson 19 that we just did an overview of is like a deep dive into this. So as all of this information rolls out, it's going to be fun to have all of these reference points, like where we're all on the same page, figuratively and literally, so we can be referring to those. And then it's one thing to have the information, but then to build on that with the application of all of this theory is especially fun. So let's talk a bit about the chord map structure and how to make sense of it. And I'm going to pull something up here. Let's see, where is it? Okay. I'm looking for, there it is. Okay. Pardon me as I pull this up. Okay. So just to recap the question on the chord wheel, on the chord map here. Okay, so I've been playing with the Aeolian mode this week in A minor to G major to D major from next door on the wheel and back to F major and C major back. Any tidbits on the chord map using that? So let's play that. So A minor, I actually happen to be in that key already. So Aeolian is a fancy name for minor. We have A minor to G, so minor 1 to flat major 7. And then D major, which is borrowed from over here in Dorian, and then C major, F, and minor 1. If you were on the last week's live stream about 4-chord progressions with 4 chords, that is, we talked about how in a minor key, these are really popular chords. The minor 1, the flat major 6, flat major 3, and flat major 7. It's an A minor, F, C, G, A minor, which sounds really good. In this case, we're actually throwing in a major 4 as well. So it has kind of a Dorian vibe, because in Dorian, so Dorian is like, you know, you think of Pink Floyd with... That's a classic progression in Dorian, so minor 1 to major 4. So the cool thing about Rostolate your progression here is that you're kind of blending the classic minor progression or Aeolian progression with the classic Dorian progression. That's a cool combination. And when we have a mix of those, as you say, between, so it's from A minor to G to D to F C D. That's interesting. So we've got A to G to D to F to C. So the cool thing about that progression is that we have A G D, F C. So it's kind of like you're starting out in a minor sound. We incorporate a little bit of Dorian, and then we go back to minor. So minor, Dorian, minor. Let's look at this motion. And of course, the melody, the lyrics that you have with that will kind of expound upon or elaborate upon that sound, really flesh it out. So with the minor, and with the, when I say minor, I mean it as a synonym for Aeolian mode. So let's look at the chord map a little bit with its structure. So we're going to zoom out here and talk about the different modes. Here I just rotated from Aeolian to Ionian. Notice that the Roman numerals are exactly the same. Like they stay in position because in essence we're keeping A as the 1. Whether it's a major 1 in this inner ring, since all of the major chords are in the inner ring, it's a minor 1 in this middle ring, since all the minor chords are in the middle ring, or it's a diminished 1 up here, like A diminished, because all of the diminished chords are in this outer ring. So if we are in the key of A, we have 7 parallel modes. Parallel. I have some videos about parallel, but the idea being is that It's just all of the modes start treating A in this example as the tonic or as the one. So in the circle of fifths, we have A, well, let's start with A major. So A major is just basically all of the notes. So A, B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, G sharp, A. So if we play the chords that are fleshed out or built upon those, you have A, B minor, C sharp minor, D, E, let's see, oh, F sharp minor, yeah, and then G diminished, G sharp diminished, and then back to A. So okay, so it's basically just the A major scale but fleshed out harmonically. And it's just all of the chords within the key of A Ionian or A major. Well, the A major chord also shows up in the key of E. If we rotate the numerals but keep that same grouping, we're in the key of E Ionian. It's the same grouping we just played, the same chords we just played, but in the key of E. A is the fourth chord or the fourth scale degree in the key of E. But let's say that we want to keep these same chords like in the key of E Ionian. So we're going to keep the grouping the same, but we're going to rotate the numerals so that we're treating A as one. Instead of 4, it's the 1. And you'll notice it's the same chords, same 7 chords. The grouping has stayed the same, but the numerals have changed. So instead of E being the 1, A is now the 1, and E is the 1's 5, or the dominant to the 1. And so now we're treating these chords as A Lydian. So we have A, and then B major, and then C sharp minor, and then we have D sharp diminished, and then we have E, F sharp minor, and then G sharp minor, and then back to A. So if we were to treat, hey, Keenan Music, it's cool to see you on. If we treat these same chords, instead of E as the tonic, we treat A as the tonic, it's going to kind of change the sound, the overall sound of these chords, because A is our tonal home base. And A Lydian has kind of a spacey sound, or kind of a light ethereal sound, because of this sharp 4. In this case, it's D sharp. So let's look at it on the keyboard for a moment here. And we have, in this case, A. If we're going to play an A major scale, is this down in view? Okay, so we have A, B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, G sharp, A. It's just an A major scale. It's how we would imagine hearing that. If we were to play an A Lydian scale, it's, notice instead of we go, it has like, whoa, it sounds a little bit different. That's the same scale as E major. So E major is, this D sharp is the 7 in the key of E. But if we start that same scale on A and play all the same notes as E major, it sounds very close to the A major scale, but with that sharp 4, building a chord on that sharp 4 is a sharp 4 diminished, or a D sharp diminished in the key of A. And it just sounds kind of strange, kind of spacey. But the parallel modes, as we go through, notice that we're moving the grouping, but we're keeping the numerals in position. So we have A Lydian, and then we have A, which is just the key of A. We have A mixolydian, which is basically the key of D. If D was the one, and we just had D Ionian, those would be the chords in the key of D. But in this case, if we rotate the numerals, so we keep the same grouping, but have A be the tonic, then that's A mixolydian. And then if we rotate the grouping, keeping A as the one, we have A Dorian, which is the same as the key of G major, but with A as the one. And then if we rotate again, we have A Aeolian, which is the same key as C major, but with A as the minor one. And then we have A Phrygian, which is A as the one, same as the key of F, but with this minor as the one. And then A Locrian, which is the key of B flat major, but with A as the one. So all of these parallel modes in the key of A are neighbors in the circle of fifths. So if we keep the numerals in place, but we rotate the grouping, we're just sliding through different parallel modes that are neighbors. And Rostolate, in your example where you had, in this case, A Aeolian, we're playing in A Aeolian with these chords, and then we're just bumping over to A Dorian. A minor is still the tonic, so we're still retaining that tonal home bass, but we're throwing in a 4 that is outside the grouping of A Aeolian. D is outside this wall, for lack of a better word. And then if we shift over, we incorporate it, and then you shift back over in your progression to play the flat 6 and the flat major 3. So by borrowing chords from neighboring parallel modes, or borrowing a chord from the neighboring Dorian mode, your progression sounds cool and sounds harmonically compatible or complete. You could go the other direction. You could, borrow, say, maybe a flat major 2 or a B flat chord, and it'll sound a little darker or a little more Phrygian. So in our example, if we were to play A minor, so I'm just going to play some chords using the classic A minor, A Aeolian. So minor 1, flat major 6, flat major 3, flat major 7. Incorporate the B flat major. Notice how it went a little bit darker. Like it got, I'll play it again without talking over it so you can really hear it. But notice how we went to this B flat major. It kind of went almost a little more, it already sounded kind of romantic or Aeolian, that minor key. But when we throw in a B flat major, it's almost like, whoa, we just went a little darker, and it's because Phrygian, in the modal spectrum, we go from light, the lightest mode, to the darkest mode of Locrian. So from Lydian light to Locrian dark, it's a gradation of modes, parallel modes in between. And like I say, lesson 19 definitely expounds upon this, and I'm going to be talking a lot more about this as we go. But as you go counterclockwise, it becomes progressively dark. So if we already started in Aeolian, which is pretty far along the dark spectrum, and we went even darker into Phrygian, that's why that B flat major, or in this case, the flat major 2, sounds even darker. Let's hear it. So flat major to minor 1, flat major to minor 1. It's like, whoa, it even sounds more forlorn. It sounded romantic and longing, and then it went forlorn, for lack of a better term. It's hard to apply adjectives and descriptors, language descriptors to music, because music is its own language. And so trying to describe it with words is kind of limiting, because the beautiful thing about music is that it defies description. Like, you can have your own interpretation. It can resonate certain frequencies within you and evoke certain emotions or certain vibes. So to try to to pin it down to a word like forlorn is limiting, because you might hear it as beautiful instead of forlorn. So I don't mean to distract or diminish with the words here, but let's play that again. So I'm gonna again play minor, and then I'm gonna throw in a flat major 2, and then let's play minor again and throw in a major 4. So we're going from kind of middle ground darkness to darker darkness, and then a little bit lighter. Let's like lighten it up a little bit and throw in a flat major 4. And since this is on the fly, I haven't like played these progressions to hear the exact effect, but the general effect will be from Aeolian to darker to Phrygian, Aeolian to lighter to Dorian, and back to Aeolian. So minor 1, flat major 6, flat major 2, flat major 7. So just Aeolian. So that's Phrygian. So I kind of jumped straight from Phrygian to Dorian, and that was a little bit weird. So maybe instead of going boom, boom, because that's a lot of movement, maybe we go boom, back, and then boom, up. Let's try it. Let's kind of see how we can smoothly weave these together. To a 7, and then we land on that minor 1 to reestablish it to a flat major 2. So again, minor 1 to a flat major 2. Let's play some more Aeolian. See if we can throw in that. Let's see if maybe if we incorporate maybe a minor 2 to kind of like keep it a little Dorian-esque. Maybe throw in a G to kind of stay in Dorian for a bit. So let me just rotate it up. So we're like. Like I say, I'm just doing this on the fly, so and I don't even have a melody that I'm going with. So it takes a bit of maneuvering through harmonic space, and frankly, having a melody to guide the harmonic flow, because the harmonic flow, so the progression itself is like, can be a beautiful thing and can guide the melody. But at the same time, the melody, because it moves in tandem with the harmony, can also guide the harmony. So just playing chords may not lead to the best result or the most satisfying momentum and direction. So if I had a melody that I started to carve out with this, it will help tell the chords where to go, as it were. I definitely know that I like the movement from Aeolian, A minor to that Phrygian. Feels like a kind of a nice bridge movement. So you'll hear that a lot in harmonic progressions. Is the bridge is a deviation from or departure, I should say, from the typical flow of a song. It's almost like a respite, or like a, hey, let's take a detour here and see something interesting, almost like you've been driving on, to use the detour metaphor, like you've been driving on the freeway for a while, and you're going to stop off to see, you know, the largest thermometer in the world, or whatever local thing is going on to make that stop interesting. The bridge is kind of like that, where it's like you take a departure or a detour off where you've been going, and then you come back on the freeway. Though you never stop and say, you know what, I love the largest thermometer in the world, I'm going to homestead here and live here for the rest of my life. Like, it's just a pit stop. That's what a bridge is. And that's what our example of kind of dipping into another mode of that flat major 2 from Phrygian is kind of doing, at least doing for me in my ears. I pulled this up because in the you have the layers of music. We're talking about chords and melodies working in tandem, how they basically stem from the same source scale. And so that's what this lesson talks about, lesson 12. The art of songwriting is where we start putting together different song layers. Lesson 13, how to structure songs, gets into, I believe that's where we talk about sections. So the verse versus the bridge versus the chorus and all of that. I'm throwing out these terms and using these concepts on the fly here, but there is definitely more on that. Hey, Tangi, it's cool to have you on. So great to see this in action. So many possibilities to change modes, going from the chorus to a bridge. Pretty cool. Yeah, in this example, where it is fun to put all this theory into practice. So in this example, you know, you can't go wrong with these 4 chords in Aeolian. I mean, we could incorporate a D minor, you know, and move from here to there instead of just these 4 chords. But since we're working with those, I do like how it comes over here to this flat major 2. And I'm trying to incorporate this flat major 3, but something to keep in mind about what I'm trying to do here and what makes it a little bit jarring on the ear, at least how I've merged those 2 chords, is notice how the flat major 2 and the major 4 in this example are both part of a perfect triangle of major thirds going in that direction, or flat major sixths going in that direction. The geometry of music does come into play here, and the relationship between those notes, major third intervals, do have kind of this epic, almost tense sound. And so in part 1, when we're talking about these geometric relationships informing harmonic intervals just from note to note, those same, and this is what I mean when I say music is fractal, or, you know, the layers at the most fundamental layer, the relationships at the most fundamental layer impact or influence relationships at higher levels, meaning, you know, between 2 notes, you have this relationship, and then between the chords built on those notes, so from B flat major to D major, have kind of that epic relationship. So as I'm incorporating, you know, Phrygian to Dorian, you know, we're talking about modes, which there's a lot going on with the note and chord groupings, but it also, at the same time, we have the geometric relationships between the notes and also the chords, which is informing how those chords sound. So that's what I mean by music is geometric, and music is geometry, because it's like layer upon layer. We're talking about a lot of different patterns all at once. And that's why I say, as I'm about to be rolling out lesson 16, which is starting to connect all of the dots that we cover in lessons 1 through 15, parts 1 through 4. It's building upon all of those patterns and principles, all of these geometries, all of these harmonic relationships. And so definitely, and especially like part 1 fundamentals, part 5, lesson 16, kind of picks up in a way where we left off in lesson 4, and really kind of builds on those principles. So if you're gonna be ready for lesson 16, definitely go through part 1 again. And I recommend going through all the parts in advance so that you have your bearings. Since, like I say, it's been a minute or two since even lesson 15 coming out. It's a lot of information, and it's a lot of information that builds on each other. So that said, I want to see if there's a way to incorporate Aeolian. Well, there's definitely a way to incorporate Aeolian and Dorian, like between just 2 parallel modes. It's very conducive because we're not reaching that far into surrounding harmonic space, but it is getting a little bit ambitious to try to move between 2 parallel modes in opposite directions, from even darker to even lighter. It's not very common. What I'm trying to do here is what I'm trying to say. And so, and it's not very common because it is hard to do. There's a lot more relationships going on. Like I say, the geometry in that epic major third interval. So maybe let's just play a little bit with Aeolian and Dorian instead. I do want to play one more time though with that B flat going from Aeolian to Phrygian, because it is nice. Minor 1 to flat major 6, flat major 3 to flat major 7. Re-establish the minor 1 to flat major 2. Back to Aeolian. Minor 1, flat major 6, flat major 3 to a flat major 7 to a minor 1. Okay, let's try Aeolian to Dorian. So, you know what? Let's start with, because we've already established Aeolian. Let's play with Dorian and maybe move up to Mixolydian. We'll just kind of see. So instead of going dark to darker, let's go light to lighter and see what goes on. So let's see. So we have a minor 1 in this case, because it's still, notice how A minor, the minor 1, the numerals haven't changed. We're just changing the groupings. And as the grouping changes, notice how the mode is changing. So as the numerals stay stationary and we're just moving between parallel modes, we're just changing the mode. The grouping, the mode changes while the numerals stay stationary. That would be a little bit different. Well, it's exactly the opposite, different from keeping the grouping the same, but rotating the numerals. So let's go, for example, let's go to the key of C. We have, in this case, C major, C Ionian, so C, D minor, E minor, F major, G major, A minor, B diminished, and C. That's the key of C. If we keep the same grouping, but rotate the numerals, so for example, let's say that we, let's rotate over to where F is the 1. We're in F Lydian. So now we're rotating through the relative modes, because the grouping is staying the same, but the numerals are rotating. So F Lydian, F Ionian, or C Ionian, pardon me, G Mixolydian, same grouping, same chords, different numerals. Then we go to, now minor 1 is with D minor, so we're in D Dorian. Same grouping, same chords, but the numerals are rotating. It's A Aeolian. So we're still rotating through the modes, but they're relative modes in this case. E Phrygian, if you can see, and then B diminished. Same grouping, same chords. The modes have basically cycled through all of the relative modes. So in other words, to play with relative modes, you keep the grouping layer stationary and rotate the numerals clockwise, successively through each of the relative modes. So in other words, layer stays stationary, numerals rotate clockwise. It's the exact opposite motion with parallel modes. So in this case, we're going to be in the key of C. We're going to keep the numerals stationary and rotate the grouping counterclockwise. And we go through, in this example, C, all of the C parallel modes from left to right. I get at the symmetry and basically the mirror image relationship between relative and parallel modes in a video about the symmetry of modes. And I've only scratched the surface. We've talked a bit about it here in terms of the mirror image motions to go through relative versus parallel modes. And I'm definitely going to be elaborating on that a lot more. It's kind of a brain twister to, and even as I'm going through, I'm like, okay, tell my fingers to rotate this direction versus that direction. It is kind of like music is amazing. Truly, the fact that all of these patterns are so intricately interwoven and symmetrical on top of that is truly beautiful. But that is, in essence, the structure of the chord map. And there's a lot more that we'll be talking about on that. But okay, let's go back to the key of A. We were starting with A Dorian. So where are we? I'm going to rotate the numerals over to A minor, and we're going to say, so A minor is the minor 1, but we're going to rotate the grouping so that it's A Dorian. And let's kind of play around with that. I'm just kind of tooling around with these chord progressions. If there's any like recommended topics that you want to talk about, we can totally go that way. So I'll just keep rambling or geeking out, that is, until you want to change the topics. But so you can't go wrong with Dorian. So whereas in Aeolian, I kind of went to a very common progression, meaning this minor 1 with these major chords. In Aeolian, in Dorian, I'm kind of going straight to the old go-to for Dorian, which is minor 1 to major 4. It's a very distinctive progression in Dorian, which is why I went from, in this case, A minor to D major. Some chord progressions, some entire songs are built on that, like Santana's Oye Como Va is basically a minor 1 to a major 4. Like, that's it. You get a lot, they call it the Dorian vamp, where a lot of jam bands, a lot of just, psychedelic jam sessions are based on these two chords alone. But we can kind of explore harmonic space more than just the well-worn path between those two chords, between the minor 1 and the major 4. Again, these same patterns apply to all 12 keys because music is cyclical and symmetrical, but we're just going to stick with the key of A right now. So minor 1. So I just went from minor 1 to major 4, minor 1 to major 4 to a major 7 or a G major, flat major 7. Minor 5, minor 2. Minor 1 to a major 4 to a flat major 7. Now, the dangerous thing about what I'm doing here, it's dangerous in a metaphysical sense. No one's about to die here, but when I go to that flat major 7, because A Dorian, it sounds like this is like a dominant to the relative major of the minor one in this case. So it sounds like it wants to go to the C. So notice how when I came to that C after I played that G, I came to the C. It was a little bit hard to come back to the A minor and reestablish that as the tonic because the major chord has a more resolute tonal home bass. And so let me play it again and you can hear what I'm talking about. So minor 1, cool, major 4 to the minor 1. Okay, I'm going to go to that G major, flat major 7. It's like going back to the minor 1 after all of that is like, huh? It sounds weaker. So that's partly why, and especially when you're in a permutation, every mode is a permutation of a given major scale. So in this case, actually the G sounds more like the resolute tonic. So if I, in any given group, so for example, let's go to the key of C. The key of C is kind of like, and I have a diagram of this, I think in lesson 9, or no, it's lesson 8, talking about how a given key is kind of like a pinball machine, where the center of gravity, the ball eventually wants, it can bounce around harmonic space, but eventually it kind of wants to drop back into that tonic position. So in this case, in the key of C, it wants to drop to C again. Now, if we play around with the key of C and let's play some of the relative modes, like if we keep that same grouping but rotate to A minor, for example, now C major is the flat major 3. We could play around with these same chords, but it's going to kind of think that the tonal point or the center of gravity is C. So if you're, all that to say, if you're playing in a permutation of a key, in other words, if you're playing with one of the other modes other than the typical home bass, you want to kind of avoid that typical home bass because your ears are going to start to gravitate towards that and think of it or treat it as the tonic. And so that's why when we were playing in A Dorian, when I hit that G, it kind of thought, oh, we're in the key of G. No, we're in A Dorian. So it's like and that's why the Dorian vamp moves back and forth and kind of jumps over and avoids the actual, I say the actual, but what would be the tonic of the major key. You kind of avoid that G. Otherwise, your ear starts to settle in there, and it's hard to get pulled back into the harmonic orbit of a parallel mode. Let's see. Owl, hey, it's cool to have you on. So what are the 4 types of cadence, and what is a cadence? That's a good question. So let me pull up. Stand by. Let me answer that question here as I pull up some diagrams to speak to that. Rostalate, it's cool to have you on. And we've been kind of generally weaving into our chat here an answer to your question from last week, which was navigation of the chord map and some getting a feel for the different movement and how this is structured, how the circle of fifths is structured. So it's cool to have you on. All right, so let me pull up some stuff about cadences. The short answer is cadences are, it's a great question. Cadences are like, you can think of them as like punctuation in a sentence, right? So you have things like a plagal cadence, or let me pull up these diagrams while I speak to it. Hold on just one sec. But you can think of cadences in a nutshell as like the punctuation in a sentence. So like periods versus commas. Hopefully I can find these diagrams. I have a post on, like a synopsis post with actually the main types of cadences diagrammed out. It's been a minute since I've talked about that topic, and I might not have them here. So just one sec. Let me pull up something. Let's see. I am looking for, if we go to the library, it's pulled up. Let me see if I can, like, if this works. Okay, let me share my screen. Okay, so I'm in the library and I'm going to go to, I think it's under maybe Song Insight, Intro to Cadences. I'm not even logged in. All right. So, well, that's a bummer. I thought I would be able to pull it up. So, using the circle of thirds is really helpful to picture cadences. I'm like, oh, cool. I can just like pull up the library. I'm not logged in. Let me see. I don't even remember my password. I don't know how to log into my own library. Okay, just one sec. Oh, man. Let me try something. This is what I was talking about with last week, having diagrams at the ready so I can just pull them up. And that is definitely one that I want to have pulled up. So if you got in late, Russell late, definitely check out an owl too, depending on when you joined. I have the update is that lesson 16 is going to be rolling out in early August, which means what that means is that the build up and backlog of all of these projects that I have had on hold is the dam is we're seeing cracks in the dam of content buildup that is going to flow forth. And so as lesson 16 rolls out and I'm getting into part 5 rolling out and all of that, it means that it's opening up bandwidth and the ability for me to work on these other projects, like having diagrams at the ready, to speak to your question. Because I'm so visual, I want to have those diagrams on hand to refer to. So, but in essence, you can think of, without getting into the details of it right now, and I'll speak to cadences more. I'm going to tag that for discussion on the next open hour. Is in essence, cadences are like the flow between chords. So you have like a perfect cadence. So in the key of C, for example, you have your tonic of C, and then you have a G, which is like it brings you back to the tonic. Yeah, let's see if that'll work. Let me hand this to you. Okay, cool. It's in one of the tabs in the browser. Thank you. So you have cadences are basically like chord flow, the flow between chords, and how they bring you back to a tonic or to something other than the tonic. So in this case, like from a 5, dominant 5, in this case G to C, is a cadence because it's like a resolution to, ooh, nice. Thank you very much. Looks like I may have access. Perfect. Okay, let me open this up. All right. Awesome. Okay, Owl. Let me get, why is that not? This is showing, okay, cool. All right, so the 4 main types of cadence are perfect, plagal, imperfect, and deceptive. And you can think of perfect and plagal cadences, which I'll describe here in a moment, as periods, as the kind of punctuation, as a metaphor of punctuation, versus imperfect and deceptive, which are more like a comma. So basically, cadences influence and guide how a chord progression flows through time. And the different types of chord changes cadence is a fancy word for a chord change and how that chord change functions in a chord progression. So, for example, using the circle of thirds, we have a perfect cadence is like if we're in all of these examples are in the key of C, so we're using a circle of thirds to show. But and this post is in the Song Insight playlist in the library. But if we have, we're playing in the key of C, so I don't think I can mark this up. But I'm looking at this one right here. We have key of C, and from a G to a C, it has from the 5 to the 1 in a given key has more of a sense of resolution, like that. You end on that tonic. It's like a period in a sentence. The period is like if people say, hey, if a child asks their parent, hey, can we go get pizza? And the parent is like, no, period. When they say period, they mean like, no, end of conversation. So that perfect cadence, it's perfect because it's like, it's perfect resolution. It's like a perfect period on the end of a sentence, if that makes sense. Plagal cadence is also a resolution to the tonic in this major key, but it's from the 4. So it's not as resolute as like that 5 to that 1 is perfect. From the 4, or the subdominant, or in this case F to C, it is very satisfying. It is like a period, but it's not as resolute or as final. It's like kind of like a somewhat more tentative period. You could go from a 4 to a 5, and that is often the case. A plagal cadence is like a period but less resolute. The 2 comma type cadences are imperfect and deceptive, also known as interrupted. So in this case, instead of going to that C or the tonic, notice how both of the perfect cadences land on the tonic. They resolve to and have more of a final sense of resolution, hence the period metaphor. A comma is kind of like it's coming to the tonic, but it's not quite resolute. It's like a comma in a sentence where it's like it's a break in the flow and it almost feels like the end of the sentence, but it's not. There's more to come. And so in these examples, the imperfect cadence, there's 3 different types of imperfect cadence. You could go, but the point is they land on that dominant chord, which is perfect because the dominant chord eventually resolves to the 1. So in this case, we could go from a minor 2 but it wants that G, that 5 wants to ultimately have a perfect cadence to the 1. So it's imperfect. It's almost perfect. It's going to the 5, which is like a nice lead to the final perfect cadence of a resolution to 1. So you go from a minor 1. So I'm looking at this one. You can go from a minor 2 to a 5 is imperfect, or you could go from a 4 to a 5, or you can go even from a 1 to a 5, and then you want to come back to the 1 to have that perfect cadence. And then 2 other types of non-perfect or plagal cadence is a deceptive or an interrupted cadence. Now, the gist here is you're going from it looks like, notice how the deceptive cadence looks an awful lot like the perfect cadence. And it's deceptive because it's kind of like a pump fake. In basketball, you can picture, I don't know if you can picture like Michael Jordan, would look like he was going to pass the ball, but then he'd like throw it behind his back or something because he was a badass and he could make you think like the flow was going to go this way. And then he zigged when you thought he was going to zag. The deceptive or interrupted cadence is basically a pump fake where you're going from a 5 and you're picturing that 5 is going to resolve to the 1, but instead it goes to the minor 6. Now the minor 6 is significant because it is the relative minor of C. So And you can see it in that the C chord is made from notes C, E, and G going in a counterclockwise direction here. I can't mark up this diagram or else I would, but you can see you have C and then E and G. Together, those three notes make up the C major chord. An A minor chord is A, C, and E. So notice how A minor, A, C, and E shares two of the same notes with C major, C, E, and G. That C and the E, notes C and E, show up in both of those chords. And so the A minor, because it shares two of those same notes, it's very similar to, harmonically similar to the one. So the minor 6 and the major 1 are two almost like twins almost. They're harmonically very similar. And so from going from a 5, it looks like it's going to drop down to that 1 and be a perfect cadence, but it's not. It's deceptive, or it's interrupted, and it goes from a 5 to a minor 6. And so instead of being a period where you're like, hey, end of sentence, it's a comma, because you're like, oh, no, you didn't actually resolve on the 1. And so there's more to this sentence, to use the period comma metaphor. There's more to the sentence. If you have a comma, you're like, there's more to the sentence. With a deceptive or an interrupted cadence, you have more to the progression. So, and you'll hear that in chord progressions where you're like, like, oh wait, I can't, the song's not over. I mean, you could end on a deceptive cadence, and some songs do, but it begs your ears and your mind and your soul to like, give me more. And so it keeps on going. So in a nutshell, Owl, that is a summary of cadences and how they work. And thank you for access to this post, because I wasn't able to log in until Virtuous Heretic hooked me up with a password. So that is cadences in a nutshell. And key music. We'll end on this, since I know we're a little past the hour. My favorite song of all time, key music. That's a good question. That's hard to say. I have multiple favorites depending on the moment and the mood. But one of my all-time favorites is Here Comes the Sun by the Beatles. I think the lyrics are brilliant. The song is brilliant. It's an amazing song. What is your favorite song of all time? And I think, your favorite song maybe says a lot about you, or maybe it doesn't. Maybe it's just because it's a great tune. But I'm interested to know key music in your favorite. And with that, we can wrap it up for today, because there's a lot for us to do, a lot for you to do today. Hopefully a good rest of your day. And thank you so much for your support here. I'm really excited, like I say, to be rolling out lesson 16 in early August. There's going to be more information on that as we get closer, but it's a milestone, and I'm excited to be sharing it with you and all that comes with it. So we will be talking soon. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you on the flip side. Bye.